Oh, hello. Yes. Just wanted to post up a sort of deconstruction of GB News covering the demonstration against the Israeli ambassador last night. Just want to sort of talk through it and again discuss the media construction that's going on here.
Ambassador to the UK was evacuated under heavy security from an event at the London School of Economics as a result of a large protest by pro-Palestinian activists against her presence. The event last night drew widespread opposition from pro-Palestinian and other groups on campus for platforming racism. That's what they accused the university of, with protesters preventing Zippy Hotovely from taking part. And I believe we can actually...
Right, okay, once again, that's not true. If you look at these photographs that were taken inside the event, and she's posted on her own social media, she was there and she took part.
Show you, before we get to our guest, the footage there of that. So that's the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the UK, just having to be evacuated, as you can see, and actually put in a car, heavy security. After that protest, obviously having to very swiftly, as you can see that there's quite an urgency there to get her.
Right, okay, yes, that's her being led out past protesters. So it's going to be the job of her security to remove her as quickly as possible, which is exactly what we see. We see a large police presence. Okay, yes, there are people. Presumably there's no noise with this. I don't really know why. Nobody gets anywhere near the car. Nothing is thrown. And as the police are at pains to point out, no arrests were made. So if it was so dangerous and violent, how come nobody was arrested? You know, bearing in mind this is a very high-profile individual, and it would be an absolutely diplomatic horror if anything was to happen to her. No arrests were made.
Away from the scene, clearly they were quite afraid for her security there.
Yeah, that's her job. That's their job. Right, that's what security are for. And as you can see, she was swiftly bundled away from the event. She took part and then was swiftly removed. People there were protesting. Nobody got near the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful, isn't it, really? You know, these people can behave like this, really. It's all one thing having strong views and one thing wanting to demonstrate them. But I think when an ambassador, you know, has to basically leg it under heavy security, there's something going...
Right, okay. So it's one thing to have strong views, but it's another thing if you do anything about it, Mr. Christie. Is it? Is that it? So, what, there shouldn't be anyone there? They should just stand there and not say anything when she goes past them? Is that it? Yes? Presumably.
I'm quite badly wrong there, but Isabel Sawkins, research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, joins us now, as I understand it, to comment on this. Thank you.
Right, okay. Now, there's somebody from the Henry Jackson Society. Why? Why have we got someone from the Henry Jackson Society? I could understand inviting a pro-Palestinian demonstrator and maybe, I don't know, someone from the Jewish Chronicle, but the Henry Jackson Society, what particular skin do they have in this game? And is she an expert? Who is this person? I bet most of you have never heard of the Henry Jackson Society. They're one of those right-wing think tanks that are always available to have a particular opinion, which she definitely does.
Thank you very much. What's your initial thoughts about that then? We've just seen the video there, haven't we? What's your take?
It's horrendous. It's disgusting. It's completely intolerable on so many levels that somebody who came to a university event, she was invited to speak. And then, as you said, you've seen the footage, she had to be hurried out under threats, not only to her own safety, but there was shouting, there was screaming. It's absolutely
Okay, you notice that she doesn't say that she wasn't able to attend the event or it didn't take place. And what have we got? What's the crime charge so far? There was shouting, effectively. That's what we call a demonstration, isn't it? So, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more.
disgusting. And more than anything, yesterday, as I'm sure you're aware, was the 83rd anniversary of Kristallnacht, which happened during the Nazi era, which was when Jews were basically targeted on the streets, their houses and their shops, they were looted. 83 years later, we are still seeing similar persecution of Jews happening.
Right, okay. How is what we saw last night similar persecution to Kristallnacht, which was in many ways the beginning of the intense Nazi persecution of Jews within Germany and Austria, I believe, at that point? How can we draw a line between people shouting and businesses being arrested and people killed? It's a bit of a stretch, I'm afraid. And why are we bringing up Kristallnacht? Oh, it was only 83 years ago. Yes, true. But there isn't a link between the two. And let's have a look at some of the demonstrations, which I've already posted up from earlier in the day. Are we going to call these people Nazis? Or these people? Are they Nazis? Are they? Presumably they are.
And it's absolutely outrageous on every level.
I think this is allowed to happen. I mean, this is a university campus. It should be a place of open debate, and it should be upholding freedom of speech. Why do you think things like this are still happening on our university?
Well, they're allowed to happen because it's legal. We haven't yet, Priti Patel has not yet, she may, but she hasn't quite yet made protests illegal. Are you suggesting, GB News, that protests of any description be made illegal? Or are you suggesting that the protesters will have a right to stand there and say nothing? Because what does that say about free speech? And since we're making Nazi comparisons, what do we call a society that bans protest? Not a free one, is it?
University campuses.
This is the thing, you're so right. University should be the type of place where people can have discussions. We shouldn't be non-platforming people. And there's a way to protest these things in a peaceful way. Unfortunately, these things are happening because we are living in a time of rampant anti-Semitism. Particularly, we're seeing it on the left, as we saw last night.
Right, okay, yes, because these people presumably were mainly from the left, we're seeing this rampant anti-Semitism from the left. I'll provide a link down below from another video which I did on a similar subject, but if you actually look at prosecutions for acts of anti-Semitism, they aren't left-wingers. People plotting bombs about synagogues in the UK are Nazis. They aren't left-wing, no matter how much, and I've had this online today, people call me a Nazi, simply because I think that people should be allowed to protest the Israeli ambassador and the actions of the Jewish state. Not Jewish people, I want to make that really clear, but the actions of the Jewish state. This woman was a member of the Likud party. She has a certain history which a lot of people are not happy with. She was in charge of settlements. I'll leave that one to hang. So I don't think it's particularly intolerable that people want to shout at her.
And there's a tolerance of it. There's an over-tolerance, and we allow these things to happen in society. The police need to be going after these individuals. They need to be holding them accountable for the horrendous actions last night.
Okay, so the police now need to be arresting people for shouting. That's what she's saying. Yeah, that's what she's saying. Shouting should now be illegal in this country, or maybe just shouting at certain people, is it? Anyone who can trace themselves to some form of Jewish blood, presumably, therefore, is not now legally going to be allowed to be shouted at.
Because the problem is, if the police don't do anything, people are going to feel emboldened. They're going to think that they can get away with this type of behaviour, and it's just not acceptable.
Okay, and, I mean, perhaps number 2 or maybe number 3 now on our list of, fallacies in terms of arguments is a wedge issue, right? If people are allowed to shout, the next thing you know, there'll be concentration camps. Yeah, except they won't, will there? Yeah, it isn't a wedge issue.
No, it's not acceptable, but it's unfortunately not the first time at all, by any stretch of the imagination, actually, that we've seen a bit of police in action, although from what I can tell, though, the police did look like there was at least some...
Yeah, there was a heavy police presence, Mr. Christie, wasn't there? That's what you saw, the police doing their job. Everybody left the scene of the crime, whatever it might have been, intact.
Physical presence, but yeah, I mean, there was a time recently, wasn't there, when a Jewish man was abused in the street. I believe it was in Golders Green, and it kick-started a lot more hate crimes, basically. And the police, there were videos of police walking next to pro-Palestinian, I suppose, demonstrators, you could say, whilst they were saying deeply anti-Semitic things, whilst they were making threats to kill, actually, and the police didn't seem to do anything about that. Do you think...
Yeah. Don't dispute the latter part of his statement there in the slightest. However, he is linking two things that aren't linked. The anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish individuals, I don't think had anything to do with the Israeli ambassador, or indeed any events at a UK university.
I think that it is one form of racism that's deemed to be more tolerable than other forms of racism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you think back to May, when everything was kicking off with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we saw horrendous actions on the streets of London. We saw convoys of cars shouting abuse at people, threatening just horrendous things to Jewish individuals and their families. And as you said, the police just don't do enough. And I think so much of it comes down to the fact that anti-Semitism is just not seen on the same... There's a hierarchy of racism that exists. And anti-Semitism is not seen to be as important as other types of prejudice that exist.
Okay, yes, I think a lot of people would agree with her that there is a hierarchy of racism, in the sense that a lot of people, and they may be right or wrong, you can make up your own mind about this, see Jewish people in this country and anti-Semitism as being very much at the top of the pile in terms of a racist abuse, should we say. So in other words, lots and lots of racist abuse, and casually on an everyday basis, basically goes unreported. Anti-Semitism is extremely widely covered in this country, extremely, like our present Israeli ambassador being shouted at. Yeah? You, I don't think, get that with other small-scale demonstrations against other ambassadors. You don't get to hear about it. Why? Because it isn't really worthwhile GB News reporting that, because it's not the type of story they want, because invariably they can't tie it magically to the left wing.
Exist in society. And so this is part of the problem. Time and time again, these awful actions happen. I mean, there was abuse of a Jewish man on a flight, on a Ryanair flight, only just a few days ago from football supporters. Things are starting to be done. A few people have been arrested.
Okay, so things are being done. There you go. Last night, no arrests were made. I don't know. It's not enormously joined up thinking as far as I can make out. However, as I will always make the point, the facts of this are in many ways irrelevant. This is simply about the media construction of a particular viewpoint that they want you to have. Thank you, Henry Jackson Society lady.
But it's not enough to do just to react to it.
Yeah.
There needs to be something stronger in society stopping these incidents from even beginning to take place.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. I mean, if only there was some sort of, I don't know, government inquiry into things like structural race. Oh no, we've had that, haven't we? Yes, the government isn't interested in racism, is it? At all. Not interested in it. Declares that racism effectively doesn't exist. So what's the other stuff that we are supposed to do? Because we have a government that doesn't care about racism because it's an electoral asset for the Conservative Party and the right.
OK. Isabel, thank you so much. Isabel Sawkins, our research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society.
Right, yes, I don't know. Make of that what you will. Please do disagree with me. Obviously, I was wrong in what I was saying. Must be, because I'm a sociology teacher. But, that's the way I approach these things. That's the way I look at these things. I want to see what's going on. And, I'm not criticising, per se, the Jewish people through this. You can call me a Nazi if you like. Various people have today. I'm not doing that. I'm just interested in the construction of this as a narrative, because it contains a lot of factual inaccuracies. And, these are a bunch of people that are demanding magically that groups of people have no say in society. And, think about that. The demand that groups of people have no say in society is a particularly dodgy one, isn't it? So don't call me a Nazi, please. Thank you. Anyway, enjoy. Have a lovely evening.